I remember the day like it just happened yesterday, clear blue skies over Seattle, a light breeze brushing against my cheeks, and this surreal moment where I was standing inside the hangar of the very airline that once told me I didn't belong in first class. This, I whispered, this now belongs to the woman you wouldn't serve champagne to. My name's Eleanor Grace Whitmore, and if someone told me 3 years ago that I'd one day own Skylinks Airlines, I'd have laughed in disbelief. But life has a funny way of turning pain into power when you don't let it break you. It all started 3 springs ago. I was 72, a retired professor of economics from Howard University, and after spending most of the pandemic separated from my daughter and grandbabies in Seattle, I decided to finally go visit. I had the means. My late husband Harold left me a solid inheritance, and I'd always been smart with investments, so I figured, why not splurge a little? Bought myself a first-class ticket on Skylinks. Not just for comfort, but because, honestly, I felt like I earned it. After a lifetime of being told to sit at the back, I wanted to sit at the front. Simple as that. That morning, I put on my favorite navy pantsuit, fastened my pearl earrings, even shined my sensible shoes. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, just showing up as the woman Harold always told me I was: graceful, smart, and deserving of every damn seat in the house. My driver, a sweet kid named Darius, chatted the whole ride to Atlanta International. He called the weather Georgia moody, and we laughed about how springtime in the South can't ever make up its mind. When I got to the terminal, everything felt smooth. The check-in agent, young girl, white, name tag said Emily, actually smiled and called me Dr. Whitmore. I appreciated that. You don't know how many times folks look at me, see my brown skin and gray curls, and assume I don't belong where I do. Security was quick, lounge was peaceful. I sat there sipping my coffee, looking at photos of Simone and my grandbabies on my phone. My heart felt full. I remember thinking maybe things really are changing. Maybe this country's not what it was when I was growing up in Montgomery, Alabama, where we drank from colored fountains and couldn't even dream of flying, let alone in first class. But then came boarding. I walked up with my boarding pass and ID. The gate agent scanned it and smiled. "Enjoy your flight, Dr. Whitmore." As I stepped onto the plane, I nodded at the pilot, a tall silver-haired man who gave me the barest glance. Inside, the flight attendant at the door, a blonde woman with a frozen kind of smile, barely looked at me before saying, "Economy's boarding toward the rear, ma'am." I told her, polite but clear, "I'm in first class. Seat 2A. She looked at my pass again, then looked at me like I'd just told her I was the Queen of England. "You sure?" she asked, loud enough that the guy behind me raised an eyebrow. I felt that familiar heat rising in my chest. I didn't want to make a scene, so I just repeated, "Yes. Seat 2A. You can check if you'd like." She gave this tight, skeptical nod and finally let me pass. I settled into my seat, heart beating a little too fast. The leather was soft, the window view beautiful, but I could already feel eyes on me. Most of first class was white men in suits. One of them sat down beside me, didn't say a word, just pulled out a laptop like I was invisible. That's fine. I didn't need conversation. I just wanted my glass of champagne like everyone else was getting. But when the attendant came down the aisle, she served every row, skipping right over mine. I waited. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she'd come back. But no. She moved right past, pouring bubbly into hands that didn't look like mine. I finally spoke up. "Excuse me," I said softly. "I didn't receive any champagne." She looked at me, face blank. "What seat are you in?" 2A, I smiled. "Just like it says here." I tapped my armrest. She paused, then said, "Are you sure you're supposed to be in first class?" Her voice was louder this time. Folks looked up. The man next to me kept typing. I pulled out my boarding pass, held it out. She didn't take it. "I'll check with my supervisor," she said, spinning around. 10 minutes. That's how long I sat there, aware of every sideways glance, every whisper. Then she came back, this time with the head attendant, Tyler. He didn't look at me when he said, "Ma'am, there seems to be a system error. Do you have a receipt for your ticket?" I showed him the confirmation email, full price, no upgrade, no mistake. But Tyler just frowned, said, "Well, it looks like something went wrong in the manifest. We may need to reassign you." I stared at him. "I purchased this seat," I said quietly. "I didn't get upgraded. I paid for it." Then the pilot came out. Captain Brandon something. looked annoyed, looked tired, looked at me like I was the problem. "Ma'am," he said, "for the comfort of all passengers, we'd appreciate it if you'd move to an available seat in economy. We'll refund the difference in fare." I felt my hands tremble. "This is my seat," I said. "I'm not moving." He leaned in. "Please don't make this more difficult." He didn't call me Dr. Whitmore. Didn't use my name at all. The man next to me sighed loudly. "Can we just go already?" Captain Harris looked at him, then at me. "We'll deal with it in the air," he said. "But right now, I have to insist." I looked around. Not one person spoke up. Not one. I stood up, gathered my things, and before I walked down that aisle of silent faces, I turned and said, loud and clear, "This is discrimination. And y'all know it." They put me in a middle seat, back row, between a crying baby and a guy chewing gum like it was his job. That flight felt like forever. When I landed, I didn't file a lawsuit. I didn't scream on social media. I just went home, hugged my daughter, and cried in the guest room where no one could hear me. But I didn't forget. Months passed. One day I got a message from a former student of Manihi, was now a partner at a venture capital firm. He'd seen a quiet post I made online about the incident, and he said, "Professor Whitmore, ever thought about owning a piece of the sky?" It started as a joke, but it didn't stay one. I did my homework. I studied the aviation business like it was my next doctorate. Quietly, strategically, I started investing. Small regional carriers. Logistics routes. One deal after another, always watching Skylinks. Then came the downturn. Their stock dipped, their board panicked, and suddenly, they were looking to sell. They didn't know who I was when I made the bid. But they do now. 3 years to the day since that flight, I stood inside the hangar of Skylinks. Signed the papers. Took the keys. Named my new executive team. Diversity-focused, service-first. And that blonde flight attendant, Brenda? She's no longer employed. I didn't fire her. I just let the new leadership review her history. And they made their call. Now, I fly where I want. Seat 1A. No stairs. No questions. And last week, as I boarded one of my planes, a young black girl in row 2 looked up at me wide-eyed. She couldn't have been older than 7. I smiled at her and said, "You sit right there, sweetheart. You belong. You know, maybe I didn't buy an airline just for me. Maybe I bought it for every little girl who ever felt too other to be seen as first class. If you've ever been judged for how you look, if you've ever been made to feel small in a place you paid to bet in, you know this wasn't about the champagne. It was about dignity. So tell me, was I right to buy the whole damn airline? Or should I have just taken the refund and moved on?" Hit that like button if you've ever seen Injustice in plain view. And drop a comment because I really want to know what you think. What would you have done in my seat? A week after the acquisition, I hosted a private event at the Skylinks headquarters. It was small, just some new executives, board members, and a few press folks we trusted to tell the story right. I stood on that sleek glass stage, looking out at the very seats where decisions were once made to ignore people like me. And I told them the truth, not just about the flight, but about the life behind that moment. I told them about my father who never got to fly at all. He used to say, "Baby girl, the sky ain't built for us." I carried that voice in my head all my life. Every time I walked into a room where I was the only one. Every time I had to smile through someone calling me miss when I was a full tenured professor. Every time I overtipped just to prove I wasn't what they assumed. And now, that little girl voice in my head is gone. She grew up. She owns the airline. As I ended my speech, someone in the back stood up. A tall white man, maybe late 50s. It was Captain Brandon Harris. I hadn't seen him since that flight. He raised a hand. "Dr. Whitmore," he said, slow and deliberate, "I owe you an apology." I stared at him. The room went quiet. He continued, "That day, I failed you. We all did. And I've thought about it more than I care to admit. If there's anything I can do to make it right, I'm here. Now, I could have embarrassed him. I could have pulled out the receipts metaphorically and literally. But I didn't. I just nodded once, steady and slow, and said, "I'm not looking for apologies. I'm looking for change." And that was that. In the months that followed, Skylinks transformed. We revised training programs, implemented anonymous bias testing, promoted based on character and compassion, not just hours in the air. And you know what? Our customer satisfaction scores? Never been higher. But the best moment? It came on a random Thursday, boarding a flight to Chicago. I was in my usual seat and a young flight attendant approached with a tray. Champagne, Dr. Whitmore, she asked. I looked up, smiled, and said, yes. And thank you for asking me like I belong. She grinned. You do. I sipped it slow. Cold, crisp, earned. Not for the taste, but for the principle. Because dignity, once taken, doesn't come back easy. You have to reclaim it. Rebuild it. Remind the world that it was never theirs to question in the first place. And if I could go back and talk to that version of me, standing in the aisle 3 years ago with trembling hands and burning cheeks, I'd say, don't cry, Eleanor. You're going to fly higher than they ever imagined. Now, some folks think I went too far, that I let one bad moment define the rest of my life. Maybe they're right, but maybe that one moment was just the last straw in a lifetime of quiet injustice. So let me ask you this. What would you have done if someone told you to move to the back of the plane after you paid to sit in front? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have bought the whole damn airline? Let me know down in the comments. I want to hear your story, because sometimes justice doesn't come with a gavel or a protest, it comes with a boarding pass. And your name printed in bold. And remember, this next time someone looks you up and down like you don't belong, just smile. Because they might not know who you are. But soon, they just might work for you.